إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم عباد الله اتقوا الله قال الله في كتابه المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون صدق الله العظيم. O servants of Allah who have come for the Jumu'ah, be conscious of Allah and do not speak during the khutbah, for it is a sin in Allah's sight to speak during the khutbah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about Sayyidina Ibrahim at the end of Surah Al-Nahl, إِنَّ إِبْرَاهِيمَ كَانَ أُمَّةً قَانِتًا لِلَّهِ حَنِيفًا وَلَمْ يَكُنْ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ شَاكِرًا لِأَنْعُمِهِ اجْتَبَاهُ وَهَدَاهُ إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. In fact, Abraham was a nation obedient to God and Hanif, and he was not an idolater, showing gratitude for God's blessings. God chose Abraham and he guided him to a straight path. You'll notice I did not fully translate these ayat, and there was one word I left untranslated. Ibrahim was a Hanif. And this word Hanif is a very difficult word to translate. And some of the old translations of the Quran, like the one I have by A.J. Arbery, they translate Hanif as a man of pure faith. What's interesting about this word is that the Christians would use it to describe us Muslims, but they would also use it to describe pagans and heathens, people who they consider to have an inferior religion. Hanif can also mean someone who is lame or crooked, someone who has an injury. The word Hanif comes from the root verb Hanatha, which means to turn away. And so from this we get the idea of a Hanif being someone who turns away from the common practices of their society and their culture. And so because of this, the Christians use the word Hanif to refer to people who turned away from what they consider to be the correct religion. So they used Hanif to describe us Muslims who seem to be deviating from the correct faith, from the Christian idea, and following the strange man Muhammad, this sort of strange innovation after Jesus alayhi salam. What's really powerful is that Allah actually takes this word, which sometimes had negative connotations, and Allah actually reclaimed this word and used it to honor our father Ibrahim alayhi salam. And in doing so, Allah teaches us a very important lesson. Ibrahim alayhi salam was a Hanif. He lived in a society of great evil, a society of shirk, where people were making idols and they were worshipping these idols. But Ibrahim alayhi salam, he had the bravery and the courage to think for himself about what was going on and to turn away from this idol worship and to turn away from this polytheism, this shirk, to a true monotheism, a true worship of Allah and Allah alone. And because he did that, this made him seem like an outcast, like a strange, deviant from the common ways. But that was actually necessary. And what Allah is teaching us is that sometimes we have to turn away from what is common and what is standard. This is an extremely important lesson in our modern day, where conformity is very easy to fall into. If we are going to be honest with ourselves, sometimes we don't necessarily do things for the sake of Allah, but we do them because it would please our parents, or because it's how we do things in our culture, or it's how our family does things, or it's what school taught me to do, or it's what our friends group are doing and I want to fit in with my friends, or it's what the Instagram influencers are telling us to do, or it's what ChatGPT is telling me to do. And I am concerned that as AI is used more and more in our daily lives, it will become easier for us to conform. Now, I'm not saying that we cannot use AI. I use it every now and again, and it is a useful tool. But we should be conscious of how this tool of the ChatGPT and these open AI tools, how they can subtly lead us to do things and make decisions without properly thinking about them. And in a time like this, it is useful to return to the legacy of Ibrahim, which is a legacy of thinking for ourselves, being critical and being attentive, having a level of taqwa as we look around at our society, and being prepared to do things out of convention and to think outside the box and to turn away from what is normal in our society. Because it might well be evil, what is normal in our society. And as we turn away, we may well find ourselves being the object of great criticism and scrutiny and even ridicule. Think about how our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was going from tribe to tribe, inviting them to Islam, his own uncle Abu Lahab would follow him, and he would quickly say, "This man is trying to turn you against your own gods, Allah and Al-Uzza, and he is trying to make you turn away from your ancestors and their traditions." He was ridiculed for turning away, and he was called a sort of deviant. He was seen as a sort of hostility to the normal ways of Makkah. And yet Allah comforts our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam by reminding him that his ultimate ancestor, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he too turned away from the common practices and from the way of his fathers. And for doing so, he too was ridiculed and harassed. His own father said, "Anta gharibun anta an aliyati la ya Ibrahim." Are you detesting or despising my gods, Abraham? And what's really powerful about this ayah, when Ibrahim's father says, "Aragibun anta an aliyati ya Ibrahim," is Allah uses that word "ragibun" to hate. He uses that in Surah Al-Baqarah to say, وَمَيْ يَرْغَبُ عَنْ مِلَّةِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ إِلَّا مَنْ سَفِهَ نَفْسَهُ. Who hates and despises the religion of Abraham except for the idiot and someone who is foolish. And so in fact, Ibrahim's father was saying, "Are you despising my ways?" When actually Allah is indicating actually it was Ibrahim's father who was despising Ibrahim's way of being critical and being prepared to turn away from evil. And anything less than that willingness to turn away from the evil you see, this is foolishness, this is stupidity. And as we look at the conversation between Ibrahim and his father in Surah Maryam, we see that in fact Ibrahim's father really makes himself look like a fool. Ibrahim very calmly says, لِمَا تَعْبُدُوا مَا لَا يَسْمَعُ وَلَا يُبْصِرُ وَلَا يُغْنِي عَنْكَ شَيْئًا. Why do you worship what cannot hear or see or benefit you at all? And then he says, "But جَاءَنِي مِنَ الْعِلْمِ مَا لَمْ يَأْتِكَ." I have received knowledge that you have not received. So follow me, and I can lead you to an even path. And he's warning it, and he warns them about punishment. إِنِّي أَخَافُ أَن يَمَسَّكَ مِنَ الرَّحْمَنِ عَذَابٌ فَتَكُونَ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ وَلِيًّا. I fear that punishment from the most merciful will touch you, and then you will be considered an equal of Satan. And to all of these very logical arguments, which our philosophers have derived lots of meanings from, his father just says, "Agharibun anta an aliyati?" Are you turning away from my gods? This very emotional and dramatic. Is this how you treat? Is this how you show your respect to your father? This sort of attitude, this sort of bubbly sensation that covers over any ability to have logic and to think clearly about what the truth is here. Indeed, there are a lot of powerful lessons for us in the story of Ibrahim about turning away from evil, especially in June, which is known as Pride Month amongst our non-Muslim neighbours. And indeed, we like Ibrahim alayhi salam are living in a society which is practicing evil, a certain type of evil, and where it has become normal. And we as Muslims, once again, as Sayyidina Ibrahim, we need to turn away from that evil. And I know that there is a lot of anxiety about where we are today, where it has become so common that they even teach us in our schools. And I would say that probably before this genocide in Gaza, this was probably the biggest anxiety of British Muslims. The idea that we are living in a country where this sort of indecency is being taught to our school children and where it's being propagated and actively encouraged. But remember that Ibrahim alayhi salam also lived in a society with great evil. and to the point where they would rather burn Ibrahim in a fire than change their ways. Let us remember that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam also lived in a society of great evil where they were killing their own baby daughters. Let us remember that Yaqub alayhi salam had 10 sons who were willing to who would throw Yusuf alayhi salam in a well, their own brother in a well, out of jealousy. It seems to be very much a sunnah of Allah that He puts His beloved servants in situations of difficulty and in environments of evil, so that we can be a source of guidance to our neighbors, inshaAllah. And remember, and it may seem daunting to stand out of the crowd and turn away from the evil we see, but if Ibrahim alayhi salam could do it, and if Allah could make the fire coolness and peace for Ibrahim, then inshaAllah He can strengthen us as well. Now, and as we do so, we may well notice that that our neighbors will have very emotional and dramatic responses, just like Ibrahim's father had this very dramatic response. And if we keep to our logical arguments, and if we keep a good decorum, then inshallah these people will in fact show themselves to be foolish, and so that a neutral person looking at this discussion can see the truth from the falsehood. قَدْ تَبَيَّنَ الرُّشْدُ مِنَ الْغَيِّ. Righteousness is clear from error. Now I should mention that there is a big difference between simply turning away from evil and going out and saying, "You're stupid for doing this, this makes no sense, you're a load of idiots." And in fact, let us remember how Allah commands us to call people to the religion. "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'izati al hasana wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan." Call to the way of your Lord with wisdom and beautiful counsel, and dispute with them in a better way. Some of you remember in a khutbah from maybe about a month or so ago, I talked about how the second command, dispute with them in a better way, this is referring to people who, like Ibrahim's father, will come at us with heckles and insults and all these arguments, and we will have to come back at them with what is better, so with a better argument, but also with a better conduct. And we should maintain a level of decency where even if they try to insult us, we do not insult them, and we actually honor them, and we actually uphold their dignity. And remember also, at the beginning of this ayah, the general command for most people is to call them with wisdom and beautiful counsel. And that means, beautiful counsel means that we actually care about their being, and we're not just trying to win an argument. And so my advice would be, if you are having a conversation about some of these evils in our day, and you find the emotion firing up, and you feel yourself getting angry, perhaps it is better to take a step back and just say, peace be with you, have a good day. Because in my opinion, it is less important that you win that argument with your neighbor, and more important that we maintain an image of the ummah as a welcoming community who is willing to bring people into the fold of Allah's mercy. And remember finally, the way that Ibrahim speaks of his father. Yes, on the one hand, he is giving the logical arguments, but with each argument he is saying, "Ya abati, lima ta'budu ma la yasma'u. Ya abati, qad ja'ani min al-ilm. Ya abati, la ta'budu ash-shaytan." My dear father, my beloved father. He could have said, "Ya abi," my father. But he said, "Ya abati," which this word implies a profound sense of affection. And essentially Ibrahim is saying, "Father, I love you," with each argument. So my brothers and sisters, as we, in this Pride Month, as we turn away from the evil of this country, and as we engage with our neighbors in discussions which may be difficult for us, let us not be people who simply fight with them and argue to win an argument, but let us be people who have sincere counsel with others, and show our neighbors that we are genuinely concerned about them, and we want the best for them in the dunya and in the akhirah. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم. قال الله في كتابه المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم كما سلمت وصليت وباركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وأذل الشرك والمشركين. عباد الله اتقوا الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون وأقيموا الصلاة.